Welcome to the Love the Star podcast. I'm Bobby Belt, Dallas Cowboys insider for 105 through the Fan in Dallas, joined as always by former NFL scout Brian Broaddus. He is now the co-host of the G-Bag Nation, 2 to 7 p.m. Central, Monday through Friday on 105 through the Fan in Dallas, and he is the pre- and post-game co-host on the Dallas Cowboys radio network, and we are coming to you live today from Richardson Bar and Grill, where Brian is getting his iced tea set up.
How about that? Service is immaculate.
Riley knocking it out of the park.
Great job.
Riley, big time listener to the station. He actually he was one of the finalists for Fan Phenom.
How about that?
Last year. And so we're hanging out here at Richardson Bar and Grill. If you guys are watching us live on the YouTube right now, come on down. Because even if you don't get here in time for Love the Star, G-Bag Nation's going to be out here from 2 to 7 p.m. previewing this Cowboys-49ers game a little bit. And I'm sure, Brian, there'll be a lot of discussion about whatever's going to come out during your show today, from Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, when some of these questions start getting asked in the locker room today about Troy Aikman's comments, or some of the stuff at the bye week, or even the Jerry Jones, are our concepts great? Not all the time. So it's never a drama-free week here with the Dallas Cowboys, but they do have the San Francisco 49ers, and it feels much different than the most recent games, obviously because of all the injuries and things like that. But I was talking to somebody in the locker room yesterday, and I'd said, in the past, this time last year, I looked at the San Francisco game and I said, man, if they lose this, I think it could shatter them.
Sure.
I don't get the sense that losing this game would shatter them. I think they're in such a state of flux right now that they don't have time to focus in on San Francisco as the team they're chasing, especially with San Francisco kind of struggling themselves. But make no mistake about it, Brian, this would be a massive win for them if they were able to get this.
Yeah, this would be very similar to, in my opinion, going to Pittsburgh and winning. When you really, you don't expect to go to a place, in Pittsburgh, you hadn't played there, you don't get to play there that often. The Steelers were a good football team, and, the Steelers were having some, questions about their quarterback at the time. The quarterback ended up playing, pretty well, got them to a 4-2 record. But yeah, this is not the same San Francisco 49er team that you've faced in the past. And it's, the same head coach, and now, with Purdy now at quarterback, he's getting into the mix of these games. But the 49ers have got several spots where they're compromised injury-wise, and we'll see if all of them answer the bell. We'll see if Deebo Samuel, with him getting out of the hospital on Monday, kind of feel like they'll IV him up and get him ready to go.
Rub some dirt on it. Yeah.
Hey, don't worry about it, pneumonia. We'll make you feel better. I think with George Kittle and the foot sprain.
Yeah.
If you listen to Kyle Shanahan talk about that, he seems to feel like that these guys were going to play, that Samuel and Kittle had a chance.
Yeah.
Now, not having Brandon Ayuk is a big loss for them.
Mm-hmm.
A really big loss. Not having Greenlaw, the linebacker, has been a big loss. I mean, if you watch San Francisco Dallas games in the past, it never seemed or appeared that the Cowboys were blocking Greenlaw nor blocking Fred Warner.
Two difficult guys to block.
Two
for sure.
Very difficult guys. So this team overall, but the problem you run into is you're just as wounded as they are.
Yeah.
In areas, and you could surely in a game like this use Parsons. You could surely use Tank Lawrence. You could surely use, and we'll see what happens, with Bland. My gut feeling is that maybe Bland will be more towards the Atlanta game. They're going to see. They're going to see how it goes these next couple of days, but Carson, I don't expect. It's just kind of a struggle right now. With the players you've lost in this matchup, because if you had yourself somewhat at full strength, you would feel decently about the chance of going in there and getting a victory.
Yeah, and I mean, especially, look, I mean, you guys will talk to Eric Kendricks on the G-Bag Nation this week. Kendricks, another guy who, I think you missed last week.
You did.
And a guy who means a lot to what you want to do, especially with this San Francisco team that likes to run the football as much as they do, and have had success with it even without Christian McCaffrey. Jordan Mason's played well. Yeah. Now, Jordan Mason, and we'll get into all the aspects of the offense and the defense here in just a sec. But I mean, Jordan Mason, physical runner, a guy who the famous Joseph Randall line, meat on the bone. He does not leave much meat on the bone. He's been really effective.
Breaks tackles.
Yeah, he's been a real bright spot for them. You know, if you get Brock Purdy into some drop back scenarios, Jordan Mason's not always going to be great with blitz pickup.
He's given up some pressures.
He absolutely has
some pressures.
So, that would be, if you could turn Jordan Mason into Jordan Mason the blocker instead of Jordan Mason the runner, that would be big for this football team. But before we get into the specifics of the matchup itself, Brian, I'm curious, when you guys, you've talked before about in Green Bay, how you guys were chasing Dallas.
Always.
And just always going after them.
Always chasing Dallas.
And it's not a direct comparison, but San Francisco's kind of been a team that Dallas feels like they've been chasing a little bit and that they've had their eyes on. I believe it's, if Micah doesn't go and some of these other guys don't play, I believe 9 of the 22 starters from the last playoff game matchup are going to be in this game, like even on your roster. So a lot of turnover. Is there a case to be made that, for instance, when you guys were in Green Bay and you guys always felt that pain and you were chasing it, is there something to the idea of youthful ignorance of, well, Tyler Guyton doesn't know what these ass kickings have felt like.
Sure.
Cooper Beebe doesn't know. Eric Kendricks hasn't been here for this stuff.
Eric Kendricks originally signed with San Francisco.
Yeah. Is there something to the idea of, you know what, maybe it's not the worst thing that you're not getting that carryover, because that juice that you were hoping to get from previous matchups might have just been a distraction or a such a hurdle for them, a mental hurdle for them, that maybe it helps a little bit to have some fresh guys in this matchup.
Yeah. But you'll figure it out real fast when you try and block, Fred Warner, or you try and block Floyd, or you try and block, a Bosa. You'll figure out really very quickly what this rivalry goes all the way back. I remember as a kid in the 70s and how important the San Francisco game was as far as playoffs. I can go all the way back to old Kezar Stadium. I could go back to and a lot of older Cowboy fans will remember stuff at Candlestick and now, but
Craig Morton, that quarterback battle between Craig Morton and Roger Staubach was ultimately settled in a San Francisco game. Yeah, where Craig Morton they moved on. He never was the starter again, and it
never
became
was.
Staubach's. Very deep, rich history for sure.
No, it is. My uncle, who he played for the 49ers for 18 years, Charlie Kruger, was a big part of the San Francisco, the 70s and the playoffs with John Brody and Gene Washington and Forrest Blue and Dave Wilcox. I mean, I can name a lot of San Francisco 49er players because they were great players. And then you go into the 80s and then the 90s when we competed we in Green Bay had a really good handle of how to play San Francisco because of Mike Holmgren and Ray Rhodes and the staff that was part of that Bill Walsh staff.
Yeah.
And George C. We had a really good understanding. We could never play against Dallas. That was, as you mentioned, the big problem. And then Dallas had a draft. They had that famous special teams draft where they drafted all backup players. And it was afterwards, it was like, well, this guy wouldn't make it, and this guy wouldn't make it, and this guy, and then you're like, boys, they just gave us an opportunity here, but you're chasing that. And that's the one thing about this current San Francisco 49er team is you have a roster that's pretty well built to win the NFC East. You've done a good job with that. You handle the Commanders and the Eagles and the Giants. It's now when you get out of conference that you have problems with, it looks like to me you're going to have problems with the Lions going forward. You're going to have problems. San Francisco in this, when you watch them play, they do everything well when it comes to running the football that Dallas is poor at.
Yeah.
And that's what gives me that pause of, man, I really love the Cowboys in this one because of all and then you think, well, wait a minute now, what's the one thing that they could do? So yeah, to your point, you're going to have some guys playing in their first San Francisco Dallas game.
Yeah.
And it's going to be very eye-opening to how the intensity of this game and you got two really desperate teams. I mean, you really have, and I think Dallas is a desperate team. I just don't think you can lose this game. And let me ask you this, Bobby, and I know I'm talking a lot here, but let me ask you this question: is if Dallas were to lose this game and say beat Atlanta and then 4-4 and start getting guys back, we'd be okay with that, wouldn't we, with all the injuries and stuff? The problem is that the way that the Cowboys have lost these games.
Yeah, I think
that's the biggest problem I have.
I think, I asked you and John Machota this question the other day about is Dallas the very definition of you are what your record says you are, or are they the team that challenges whether that's really something that you should do?
Right.
Because I think that
I wonder about that. I do.
This is a good juxtaposition, I think, because, and let's dive into the specifics of the team. I think when you look at, these are two very different 3-3 and 3-4 teams. San Francisco looks like a much better team than 3-4 to me when I watch tape. I mean, they have had, big problem for them has been just some boneheaded plays at times. They're turning the ball over more than they typically do.
Yeah.
And
been bad in the red zone, which is not something they're normally at. And they've struggled with run after catch.
And the
yak.
The yak has hurt them on defense and
on offense too.
On offense and defense.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
When you look at just in general, the issues that San Francisco's had, I think a lot of it could just be boiled down to they're not closing games. Fourth quarter has been just a monster for them. They are, I believe they are there's something like plus 40 on their point differential this season in the first through third quarter. They're getting outscored, I think it's 57-41 in the fourth quarter this year. I mean, that was the Arizona game. They made it close with Kansas City. Kansas City pulled away in the fourth quarter.
Right.
They've had these issues where the Rams game, they should not have lost the Rams game.
No.
That they had no business losing the Rams game or the Cardinals game. They were right there with Kansas City, right there near the end with Minnesota. I mean, there were a couple different games here where it's like they reasonably could have won these games, but they haven't, and that's part of their character. That's part of who this team is. But, Brian, I'm curious for you, what is the biggest difference you've seen watching them this week in terms of the margins of being 3-4 versus the juggernaut we've become accustomed to with them?
Tell you what, you don't see the receivers separate like you would in the past. Mm-hmm. This team, you look at the two teams, and they're very similar in the way of their quarterbacks deal with a lot of tight window throws.
Yeah.
And you wonder, really, where's the speed? And you take a guy like Ayuk out of it, as I mentioned earlier, it's like even a slower team.
Yeah.
When you watch them, you haven't seen now the physicality that they run the ball with. When you see it with Christian McCaffrey, and you mentioned, that back has done a hell of a job.
Yeah.
With the way he's filled in, his numbers very comparable to what you saw with Derrick Henry. Several weeks ago against and even more explosive plays. Those 10-yard plus 10-yard runs. This kid has like 19 of those.
Does he remind you of anybody when you watch him?
I was trying to kind of figure that out because I was trained in a way to always talk about, hey, when you were with older scouts always did this, where they would say, and Jerry, working for Jerry Jones, you have to do it a lot. He reminds me of,
right.
And then you say the guy's name, and then Jerry kind of goes, oh, okay.
Yeah. And then you say he reminds me of Troy Aikman, and you end up trading for Drew
Henson. And then that's when that's when Sean Payton looks at me and goes, we're effed. So, but yeah, I'm trying to think, when you start to talk about backs he's not as big as Derrick Henry, but geez, look at the way he's able to break tackles and the way he's able to run. And there's just that element when the ball gets to the corner. And that's, I think, where Dallas is going to have to win. Dallas is going to have to find a way. And it's tough to win against Trent Williams. And it's, McKivitz has been, in the past, has been a guy that's been a little bit of a liability, but he's playing better for him at right tackle. Where they struggle is really at the left guard spot with Banks is where they've struggled. So
Banks in the center.
Yeah.
The center, I feel like, has given them some issues in pass protection.
Yeah. He hasn't given them as many pressures as he had in the past, but to me, this, Bobby, is about trying to win. Can you win with Oso Digizua inside against Banks and the center if you want to go there? Because to me, if I'm Dallas, I'm concentrating on playing run defense. That ball, when they get underneath center, 76% of the time, they're going to hand the ball off to either that jet sweep stuff, or you're going to get the ball going to the running back there. So you have to be ready for that. I would think about, pass rush with if San Francisco is compromised with their wide receiver room, you got to feel like, hey, we can cover Cowing, we can cover Pearsall, we can cover these guys.
Yeah,
you got to feel that way.
The problem is you haven't been able to stop people with 8 in the box.
That's the thing about it is when you play stack box, and that's 43% of the time, you're getting hurt. And the simple solution for everybody out there is, well, just stack the box. He's stacking the box, and they're still getting beat up front.
Yeah, they're top 5 highest rate in the NFL. I think Dallas is in terms of stack box percentage. Really quick, I was having while you were talking, I was having a look. I was like, the name that came to mind for me, I got to see if the size comparison makes sense. Mason's bigger, so it's probably not perfect. But the guy I kept seeing, I don't know if it's just running style or whatever else, he reminded me of Mark Ingram a little bit when I was watching him run.
Boy, Mark, you're right, because Mark was a square-built guy. Mark, I think, a little thicker. Maybe a little wider.
Mark was
shorter,
5'9",
a little wider,
yeah.
But the running style, I could see where you're going with that.
That was the guy that kind of popped in my head. Yeah. All right, you were listening to the Love the Star podcast live from Richardson Bar and Grill. Come on out as we wrap up, even if you're not here in time for this. Yeah, look at that, the sweet
it's iced tea. Yeah,
look at that. Even if you can't make it out here for the conclusion of this broadcast, you guys can hang around from 2 to 7 p.m. Central today to see Brian brought us in the G-Bag
We're giving away flags and stuff. Flags, and I think we got etched glasses and stuff. We got a lot of things going on today.
Tons of giveaways, and this is a great vibe, cool spot. This is one of my favorite hangouts.
This is divey fun.
We've done hangouts here before during the NBA Finals. We came out and watched some stuff. So great time. Come on out if you're in the DFW area, since I know we have listeners all over the place. DFW area to Richardson Bar and Grill. But you're listening to the Love the Star podcast. The Love the Star is an Odyssey podcast. You can find it on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Brian, let's take a look at, you want to start with more specific defense or offense?
Tell me what you think about their offense.
So I obviously, the way that they run the ball, and I don't think it's fair to Jordan Mason to just be like, well, throw anybody back there.
No.
Because he's done a lot to maximize what they're getting. But I think that the way they run the ball and the injuries they have to their playmakers, Brian, I don't know why Kyle Shanahan would come into this game with anything more than a 3-1 rushing to passing margin. Ego, maybe.
A
little bit. I'll say this. I think Brock Purdy has, to me, when I put on the film,
there's some struggles.
There's, especially last week, struggles
holding the ball.
I feel like he's played better than I thought. I thought it looked better on film than I was anticipating, just kind of seeing what his stat lines have looked like.
Sure.
Kansas City was a bad game.
Yeah,
that he was not good.
The intermediate passes were really bad, and that's where they live.
He made the red zone interception was bad. The first interception of the game was bad. Just not a great performance from Brock Purdy in that game. But overall, I think that this still largely looks like San Francisco to me.
Scheme does.
Like I look at it and I go, yep, that's the 49ers. When I watch them, some of the stuff they do in the intermediate passing game, which to your point, they struggled with last week.
They did.
That's going to
And Kansas City got lucky a couple times. Ayuk had a drop that would have been a huge play. They tried to throw the wheel to Juszczyk, and that's usually a killer play. And Chenal, the linebacker, carried it. And then they had tip balls at the line of scrimmage.
I don't think people have it. I mean, I know they know, that's the fullback in the NFL. Juszczyk. I don't think people understand how important he is to their scheme design.
Follow him, you can usually find the ball.
Man, he is critical to everything that they do, just with motion and lining things up with their formations.
Yeah, I think half the time he's in motion some way. This is where, Bobby, I think your assessment of what they've done, I think, is absolutely spot on. The thing you do see is you still see the motion. You still see the Deebo Samuel in the backfield. You don't see him throwing him the ball like they did. He's only had one ball thrown his way in the running back as a running back. They usually hand him the ball. I think he's got 51 yards on like 16 carries.
Yeah.
But this is where I think Kyle Shanahan gets you, is that he's really good at taking his extra guys. He's going to play with numbers. He's always going to try and be strength in numbers.
It's a math game for him.
And he if he feels like he starts with 3 on one side, and what he'll do is he'll bring that fourth guy over, and if you don't adjust to it, he will have that extra blocker over there, and they match up. And then next thing you know, by the time you adjust, the ball's for a 7 or 8 yard gain because you did not match with it quick enough. But he is a master of playing the numbers in the math game when it comes to number of blockers and how to put them in position. If you do not adjust with him or defend that, you are going to have some problems defending his offense because he's really big on believing in that.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why I think Brock Purdy is essentially the perfect quarterback for what Kyle Shanahan wants to do, because I think Brock Purdy plays really well into that too.
Yeah.
At the line of scrimmage of surveying things, figuring out the numbers, figuring out how to get them into the best position. And so they blend really well together, and they've had success. Like you mentioned, you can say, well, let's even operate under the assumption, which isn't going to happen, but let's operate under the assumption Kittle's out, Samuel's out,
yeah.
Juwan Jennings is out. Juwan Jennings is a really good player.
Juwan Jennings good player, not nearly enough.
Juwan Jennings is really impressive, I think. But Jennings, Ayuk, Samuel, Kittle, McCaffrey. Let's say you're missing all those guys. Brian, that's 477 of Brock Purdy's 560 career completions. That's 85% of his completions. You would feel like, oh, well, that's great. Load up the box, take away the run. It's not going to be like you mentioned, though, they've loaded up the box. They
43% of the time.
The problem is they get blocked up, or they're late on their keys, or they misread it, or they just don't make a tackle.
They do.
And
that's at 16%. 16% of the time they're going to miss a tackle.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, they're tackling. I got to imagine Mike Zimmer's just
losing his mind
with the way this team is tackled. And that's my biggest concern in this game. Is I look at it and I say, you can tell me all the injuries and their all the personnel. I'll tell you what remains the same regardless of what personnel is there. The toughness, the physicality, the style of play is the same no matter who they have in there. They don't lose somebody and go, other than I'll say, I think the passing game looks different without Ayuk.
It does.
But overall, their running game and their general philosophy, I think their offense is pretty much the same regardless of who's getting switched in and out.
The things that bother you when you play San Francisco, they also have this sneaky ability to delay blockers and then run them in routes. Mm-hmm. It's like it's ball. They run a waggle or a boot. They get a guy. They get him in. They get the motion, and then they get block, go, and then now they've got, and they'll hold the ball forever, which allows Kittle to get up to. They tried to throw Kittle the crossing route the other day. They got intercepted.
Yeah.
The safety drove on the play and it was an interception. But that's the things they kill you with are these. They show you, and then they're gone. Or they show you, and then it's something else. They do a great job with that. You have to be ready of if your man is, and this is what I talked about with Shenault from the Kansas City Chiefs, the linebacker. They put Kittle, they put Juszczyk as a fullback, and then they run everybody to the right and they run him left, and they just run him through the line.
Yeah.
And as everybody's flowing one way, he's going back the other, and now it's up the sidelines, and Shenault was able to carry him up the field. And that's where you sit there and you go, damn, okay, that was a great idea. That's something you're going to see that with them. They're always going to try and find ways to delay or get a guy out, sneak a guy out. They're really, really big on the crossing routes. I don't know how you couldn't watch the Detroit game against Dallas and say, damn, we shouldn't throw any crossing routes. Dallas acts like they've never seen a crossing route before.
Which that used to be a big staple of Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore loved them.
Man, never. I mean, to me, that's where San Francisco is going to try and make a living. And when Brock Purdy's on, he's hitting a lot of routes in the middle of the field. When he's not good like he was in Kansas City the other day, against Kansas City, I think he was 3 of 11 on intermediate routes. Couple of tip balls, interception, a drop. They had some problems, but Dallas is one of the worst teams in the league when it comes to playing middle third defense.
Yeah.
The safety play has just been not good enough when you're dealing with those crossing routes and things like that, or your linebacker depth. And, I feel terrible because everybody's like, oh, Broadish, you're being a
negative Nancy.
Yeah. And I'm really not. I know I was on with Jeff Kavanaugh this morning. And if you watch that, if you watched our podcast doing that this morning, I'm just trying to tell you what I see. I think Bobby's doing the same thing. The things that Dallas are not good at defensively play to the strengths of what the 49ers, for their ability, running the football, throwing intermediate routes, throwing it into the middle of the field. Those are all things that play well for San Francisco that play poorly for your defense. And that's where this thing could very well come down. It's not going to be about personnel because you don't have your personnel. That's the unfortunate thing.
Yeah.
You don't have likely, we'll see about Bland, but guys like Carson and, guys like Tank, guys like Parsons, you don't have these guys. And that could be your big problem this week.
I mean, everything you just laid out there, that's what San Francisco is. San Francisco is math, numbers, formations, misdirection, maximizing to the fullest extent the width of the field. And really attacking teams, I mean, they'll get the vertical passing game going at times too, but really, we've talked about it before. They're tight formations, bunching things up, and saying we're gonna maximize every bit of space that's available to us horizontally, which is very classic West Coast type of thought philosophy. But it's a modern version of it for sure.
There's two teams that play condensed. Well, actually, sorry, I'll get this right. There's only one other team that plays more condensed.
Can I guess?
Than the 49ers.
Can I guess?
Yes.
Miami.
No.
Rams.
Yeah.
McDaniel or McVay. One of them.
Yeah. Rams and 49ers play more condensed. And you know why they play condensed? So they can get their blockers in position. They're not asking Tolbert to play. Dallas plays with more width than anybody in the league.
Yeah,
and
I think their formation is 7 yards wider.
They are. Dallas plays. The 49ers play at 20 yards. Dallas is at 26. As far as why, and these are metrics that I'm learning now. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Why do you play condensed formation? Well, number one is you're trying to confuse some of what's going on in the secondary, but it also puts your receivers in a position to block.
Yeah.
You're not asking Tolbert to come from width to have to block on Aiden Hutchinson, and he doesn't get the block, and now Aiden Hutchinson is come screaming off the backside, and it's a gain of 1.
Yep.
And you kind of wonder, well, why didn't that work? Well, because you're playing with a lot of width.
Yep.
So
it's hard to crash down and get there in time.
It's hard to get there if you're playing with, but the 49ers, they play a really, really condensed offense, and they're able to function out of that. They throw the ball well out of it, and they run the ball well out of it.
We are live here for Love the Star from Richardson Bar and Grill. Come on out if you're in the DFW area. 2 to 7 p.m. G-Bag Nation is on for 105 through the fan. So come out, hang out, get some G-Bag flags, some cool giveaways. We're about to go to the mailbag. Before we do, we're obviously going to touch on the defensive side for San Francisco.
Yeah.
But as we get through this defensive side, if you're watching us on the YouTube, feel free to submit some questions right now. I see we got a bunch of people in the chat there. So if you've got a question that you want us to answer here in the next 5 minutes or so, go ahead and drop it in there and we'll mark some of them. Brian, defensively, to me, it's all about, I got to say, this is clearly a defense that's not as good as it was last year.
Yeah, they're missing some guys.
Yeah, they're missing some guys. I never thought I would see a defense led by Fred Warner look as troubling at times as it does.
Yeah.
Because Fred Warner, to me, I think if you take
he's still a really good player, though.
There's a pound for pound argument that Fred Warner's, best player in football type. He is incredible. But when you watch this team, and they're on their 4th defensive coordinator in 5 years, I think.
Amazing.
When you watch this, still relatively similar to what Wilkes was doing. They don't blitz a lot. That's not happening.
They're the 4-man rush. That's what you're going to get that a lot.
They're running essentially the same, man zone, frequency.
A lot of zone
coverage schemes. Yeah, a lot of zone. One thing I think I noticed, and I jumped back when I was studying this week when I saw it a little bit, and then I had to research some stuff. It definitely looks like, and I don't know if they're concerned about their ability to stop the run right now, or what the issue is, but they seem to be bringing an extra defender into the box more frequently than I think Wilkes did. That is something that I definitely feel like, they don't have as much that they can commit to the secondary right now because they're having to, bring somebody extra into the box here. But this is, to me, a San Francisco team that's not tackling as well as they have in years past. is giving up a little bit more separation.
Yep.
And has just had some issues with, at times, what looks like, and maybe this is the function of a new coordinator, at times it looks like they've had some communication issues, which has not been a hallmark of the San Francisco defense.
No, and it's man, everything you said is absolutely right. There's limited when it comes to blitz pressure. It's all really 4-man line. They do a really good job of getting off the ball with Bosa. If you're one of these metrics folks, when they talk about get off, and they always, what was his get off time there? What was, we always used to talk about that in scouting. Mm-hmm. But Bosa's like, 0.68. Like, it's the fastest get off time of any edge in the league. He's the quickest. And then you look on the opposite side, though, Floyd is at 0.76. So you have two guys within the top 10 in the league when it comes, and they're playing the edge for the 49ers. But they've done a really good job, I think, with, in getting, trying to get Bosa some help. What's funny is Bosa has got more production playing as a right end than he does playing as his normal left end spot.
Yeah.
So
he splits pretty evenly.
Yeah. His splits are very, very even. But where you look at it is that when you're like, wow, okay, well, that was a good rush. That was a good pressure. It's been off that right side, which is not, so, he's played against, against Terrence Steele. If you remember last year, I just wanted to go back and look. He matched up against Steele on 17 pass rush snaps last year, 4 pressures and half a sack. Mm-hmm. So, Steele, if you're talking about 17 pass rushes, he had 4 pressures and half a sack. But the thing about him, he's only had 1 sack in his career against the Dallas Cowboys. So for the most part, they've done a pretty good job on him. But him, Floyd, they have this player, this guy Givens, who was was a defensive tackle. It's kind of a swing, kind of a rotational piece. All of a sudden, this cat's got 3.5 sacks. His career, he's had 4.5 sacks. Where he is, he's actually, he's well on pace to break his sack total. So, they've had some guys that have played well. We talk about really where the Cowboys are playing in the middle of the defense.
Yeah.
49ers have had just as much problem. And you talk about playing with the guy down, but Hufanga not being in the lineup, they've had to kind of go with the rookies. They've trying to kind of, to fit some guys in there, but they've given up almost 10 yards an attempt in the middle of the field. Now, the problem with that is that's not to Dak Prescott's strength this year.
No.
They've struggled with routes, in breaking routes. They've struggled with crossing routes. They've struggled to try and win the middle of the field. If you look at the metrics there, and I'm not trying to wear you out with numbers, but it tells a little bit of a story. 5th fewest in the league at 6.6 yards per attempt in the middle of the field. And here's San Francisco giving up 10 yards at an attempt in the middle. And you really, you can't take advantage of that at the moment.
Yeah.
And that's a little bit troubling right there.
All right, we're about to go to the mailbag. We do have Brian's got to get to a broadcast here soon, so we're gonna have an abbreviated mailbag. Before we do, Brian, pick for the game.
I'm going to pick San Francisco in this. I just feel like that they're going to be able to run the football, and Dallas is down players, so San Francisco likely. I have a feeling that that Samuel will play, and then Kittle will play, and that'll be a problem for the Cowboys. So if I had to say, I think this is probably going to be a low-scoring game. I'm going to go with San Francisco 23, Dallas 16.
Yeah, I see it the same way you do. It'd be nice if I felt confident that stacking the box would work to help stop the run. I'm just not convinced it will. And if Samuel's ready and they're going to get some guys back, I think that this one will look, similar to games we've seen in the past, which they haven't gotten the doors blown off every time, but similar, execution from San Francisco and similar questions and problems for Dallas. I'll say that this one's going to go San Francisco 27, Dallas 13. You're listening to the Love the Star podcast live from Richardson Bar and Grill. It is an Odyssey podcast. You can find it on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Brian, let's jump into the Dean Julia Love the Star mailbag, answer a couple quick questions before you got to run off and do another 5 hours of broadcasting. First
Get some
question.
more iced tea. It's good iced tea.
I'm going to throw out the first question here because I meant to actually ask it in the first half hour here.
Yeah.
I threw it out to Nate Newton yesterday, Nick Eatman, Tommy Yarsh on Cowboys Crosstalk. The Detroit performance was bad all the way
Very
around.
bad.
All
Yeah.
53 guys probably can walk out of that game and say, I could have been
Pittsburgh
better.
was good, though.
Yeah, Pittsburgh was good. Detroit wasn't.
Right.
If sitting on that 2-week bye, who's one guy that you say, you in particular got to be better this week? It's critical this week that you don't play like you did against Detroit. And I'll throw my answer out first. To me, we talk about the run game and everything else. I need Giants game Mozzie Smith.
Yeah.
I don't need the Mozzie Smith we saw at the beginning of the season or recently. I need the Mozzie Smith that showed up against the Giants, because if you can get that, I think your chances of winning this game and stealing this one shoot up exponentially if he can be a factor. Who's your guy?
I think Mozzie Smith is a good one. 80 pass rush attempts for him, not a pressure yet. That is really, really difficult to deal with right there. They're a defensive tack. Not to say, hey, how about our guy at the Giants?
Gosh, why am I Dexter Lawrence?
Dexter Lawrence has got like multiple sacks and double team the most of anybody in the league. I'm not saying that Mozzie Smith needs to be Dexter Lawrence, but you're absolutely right about that. I'm going to say that Dallas is going to need Diggs to play really, really well in this game. And I know that I'm talking run, but I'm also thinking that run could turn into play action. And I do worry about them trying to.
He was awful against the Lions. This
Kyle Shanahan, has got just as much an ego to say, look what I did. I beat Dallas with a banged up receiving core and backup dudes. He's that kind of guy that, where he should run the ball 50 times in this game, he'll probably try and throw it some.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say this. Diggs has got to be good on the edge. And I mean on the edge. I mean, you've got to be able to come up, and that ball has to be pushed back to the inside.
There can't be any Olays.
There can't be any Olays on the edge, or you're going to give up massive yards here.
All right, Brian, next one here. We'll actually go to the YouTube for this one. Jello on the YouTube. Thanks for joining us live here from Richardson Bar and Grill. Jello asking for the Cowboys over or under 20 rush attempts this week.
I'd like to believe it's going to be over. I'd like to believe that all of them come in the form of Rico Dowdle, or a split between, not a split, but a Rico Dowdle and Hunter Lipke type of an attack. Give them a taste of their own medicine. They're going to hand the ball to Kyle Juszczyk a couple of times. Yep. Go ahead and hand it to Hunter Lipke. This needs to be a tough running game. This needs to be a Pittsburgh type running game attack. I'm not using Ezekiel Elliott in this game. I'm just not. I'm sorry. I think every carry needs to either go to Hunter Lipke. I think you're going to have to maybe do some jet sweep stuff. It's hopefully those are called at the right opportunity. But I'm going to say it's going to be. I want to believe it's going to be over, but I'm not too sure it'll be over.
Next question from Massey on Twitter. What do you think is the reason McCarthy has gone?
Do you think it's going to be over?
Yes.
Okay.
I
good,
do.
good.
Not way over, but I do think it's going to be over.
Good.
Massey says, what do you think is the reason McCarthy has gone back to his stale play calling from pre-bye 2023 and away from what was successful post-bye 2023? Brian, there's probably a lot of factors for this.
Do you think the routes are same? The routes. If you look at CeeDee Lamb post-bye of last year, and I did this. I went and looked at this. Okay, post-bye last year. Can I do this real quick?
Yeah, hit me.
Post-bye, slants, 19 of 26. This is post-bye. Hitch, 21 of 22. Out routes, 18 of 25. Post, 7 of 11. Go routes, 6 of 17. But that's 151 yards and 1 touchdown there. Crossing routes, 11 of 16 for 79. That's all post routes for CD post-bye week last year. Pre-bye. Here we are. Crossing routes, 6 of 10. Hitch, 6 of 8. Slant, 6 of 13. 54 yards, no touchdowns. Go routes, 4 of 8 for $147, a touchdown and an interception. Screens, 4 for 4. And then out routes, 3 of 5 for 78 yards and a touchdown. It's the same routes.
For CD, the route tree is absolutely the same. I will say, I think that the route combinations within the entire, which obviously are going to free up easier looks and do some different things.
I hope I didn't give everybody tired head.
No. I think that's good. And we'll, you can, if you want to screenshot that, then when we clip this for like a teaser, we'll throw the graphic up there too, so people can kind of see it while you go along. But I will say, I think a lot of this is coming down to, if you want to talk about the offense looking a little stale, I think a lot of this comes down to
red zone is bad.
Well, they have a lot of concerns, I think, about
the offensive line. Yeah, I think you're right about that. I think that's why Smith started against the Lions.
Yep. I don't think that Mike McCarthy has a ton of trust in the offensive line right now. And
sure
Dak Prescott at times looks like he doesn't have a lot of trust in it. All right, that does it for us here today on the Love the Star podcast. But again, you can come out to Richardson Bar and Grill, hang out for the next 5 hours. Look at that, a great tea. Is that one of the Tolbert one? No, that's not the Tolbert Cup. But you can come out here and get a Tolbert Cup if you come out to Richardson Bar and Grill. In fact, right here on the YouTube comments, Brian, Jake comments and says, I'm here at RBG, but I don't want to bug y'all. Well, you should bug us just as soon as we hang up the stream.
He was listening yesterday when I was talking about Bug Chiafalo.
Oh yeah, bug.
No, say hello.
We'll be out there.
Zach loves to be bugged too.
We'll be out there just a second. But that does it for us here today on the Love the Star podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll talk to you guys again later. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date on our latest updates. Links are in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.